Hi everyone, a very good evening to you. Welcome to round one of the Ferrari Challenge North America 2020. We're live from Daytona International Speedway, under the lights. And look at this calendar for 2020, which includes Road Atlanta, Indy, Montreal, Laguna Seca, Watkins Glen, and the finale mondiale to come in the United Arab Emirates at Abu Dhabi. Wow, what a season in prospect, and what race in prospect tonight under the lights. The cars look brilliant. The headlights are gleaming, and each and every driver champing at the bit. This is exactly where we are. All the info, as always, at races.ferrari.com. Boy, have we been looking forward to the season getting underway. 5.729 kilometers. We're talking about something like 12 turns, 8 of them left-handers, 4 of them are right-handers, and of course in the oval turn, some 31 degrees of banking. What an awesome place. Air temperature 16 degrees, track temperature exactly the same. So the cars out on their formation lap then, ready for this 30-minute race, which kicks off the 2020 season of the Ferrari Challenge North America. Here's the grid, Cooper McNeil, starting where he left off last year, pole position, John McGrew alongside Dennis Ross-Chwest and Joe Rubo. Dave Musial, the second best of the AM drivers, goes from P5. Neil Gahani, champion last year, Brent Holden, Kayola, Davis, Musso, McCarthy. The names keep on rolling as we go through to row 7 now with Chris Cagnazzi, then it's Barry Zeckelman, then we see Workman, Senaretti, Hereggi, and Coleman. What a brilliant debut Coleman has made. Todd with a great lap in qualifying. Gaio, Krekel, Seldorf, Schreibman, Booth, Horstman. They occupy rows 10 through to 12, and then we find Michael Watt and Savini and Wetherell, Lawler, Bake, and Dave Musial Jr. making his debut in the Ferrari Challenge. Quattelbaum, Lance Corley, then we see Heck and Bernier, Aitken and Heggie. What a packed grid of cars as all the classes come together with Eileen Bildman and Perescoia coming up on P38. So we have the Pirelli drivers, the Copa Shell drivers, and of course the AM drivers all mixed in for good measure as well. Well, my heart's beating, waiting the green flag. Can only imagine the tension that's going through these drivers. My partner in crime, as always, Greg Creamer. What can you say about this place?
Well, Dave, it is an amazing venue to be sure, and it is big time, no question, when you're at Daytona International Speedway, and that applies as well to the performance. In talking with a few of the coaches and some of the engineers, they said the 3 things that matter at this track are obviously top speed, and when you're dealing with lots of top speed, braking has got to be very effective. These cars are upwards of 195 miles an hour into turn 1, 185 into the bus stop. But you also need big grip coming out of the horseshoes on the inside to get the launch. And that's part of the compromise you have to have at this place. The transition from the infield to the banking is very abrupt. The cars have to run a little higher ride height so they don't bottom out. That, of course, means you get a little bit more pitch sensitivity in the car because you can't run it quite as low and stiff. It's a huge compromise here, and if you give up too much downforce, you're slow on the infield. And remember that infield kink, Dave, wickedly fast. You lose a lot of time there if you struggle through that corner. So this is the ultimate compromise, and I'll tell you, for the first time for Ferrari Challenge North America to be running under the lights at night, to do it here at Daytona with the Ferris wheel and just the history of this great venue, this is special stuff.
You're talking about turn 4, the kink. What a brilliant, it's one of my favorite corners because it really does reward those that are very brave. And we have so many very brave drivers out there. As Greg has indicated, doing it under the lights here at Daytona is something very special indeed. The season could not get off to a more spectacular start. The cars all lined up behind the safety car then on their formation lap, ready for this 30-minute race to launch the 2020 season here in Daytona, of course, in support of the Daytona 24-hour race. And you can see just how keen the drivers are, champing at the bit. Cooper McNeil, John McGrew on the front row of the grid. A Pirelli driver and Pirelli AM side by side. Look at them all dicing already, almost into the back of the safety car. So keen are they to approach the green and get this race going. We know we've got 30 minutes of hot rocking action to come from the Ferrari Challenge North America here, getting our 2020 season off to an absolutely flying start in the dark. All those corners await them, and you can see how tightly bunched they are in the pack then. And what a sight that is, and one of the best camera angles, because not only does it bring you the sight of the cars, but the sound as well, as they all bunch up together now. It is just moments away from getting the greens and getting the first race underway. And Cooper MacNeil gives it an absolute footfall and leaves John McGrew standing then as they head towards the green. And the clock starts counting down. The 30-minute duration is on. So who's going to be brave enough going into this first turn, of course? And immediately you can see that someone on relatively cool tyres has suffered and has gone very sideways and has been collected by one or two other cars as well. It's almost inevitable because, as we see yet another go out, and that's the 105 car of Brad Horstman, the Foreign Cars Italia driver. He's been spun around, may be able to recover from there. As the rest of the cars do get going, we pick up on car number 30 there, driven by Dave Musial. Dave Musial, towards the end of the season last year, was extraordinarily quick, and of course his son Dave Musial Jr. joins us in the Ferrari Challenge for this year. Here comes the replay then of the skirmish right at the start of the race. Inevitably being caught out in that, Brad Horstman then, the Shell driver who finds himself pirouetting on the grass. It's hardly the start to the race that he would have liked. Also out then the Caiola car from Ferrari of Long Island, the number 9 machine of Alfred Caiola, who has been able to rejoin. And well, Cooper MacNeil, he got it all absolutely nailed right at the very start and has already built up a sizable lead over John McGrew. Then it's Ross Twest and Dave Musial, who is running P2 in the AM class of Trofeo Pirelli. Another car that has gone around and is beached and parked up is the Michael Krekel car from Ferrari of Beverly Hills. And here is Cooper MacNeil then. Of course, he was out just a few moments ago in the pre-practice session for the Daytona 24, so he will know just what the track conditions are like, and has been able to use that for his to his advantage, that's for sure. Standings on the screen for you. MacNeil from McGrew, then it's Twest and Musial and Joseph Rubo and Mark Musso occupying the top 6 positions. As we follow the lit-up brake discs, both front and rear of Cooper MacNeil, as John McGrew is now putting him under some pressure. As the first 5 of the cars, you can see, beginning to break away nicely now from the rest of the pack and get their race. But MacNeil is under pressure here. So Cooper MacNeil now, whether he made a mistake somewhere, he just seems slow relative to John McGrew. But John McGrew makes a Horlicks of going into that turn, and that has allowed Cooper MacNeil just to breathe. And we could just catch sight of the Joe Rubo car as well. There around is the number 21 car. So Workman then, the Ferrari of Central Florida entry, has gone around and we've now been given a full course yellow, so that of course will reduce the speed of all the cars and gives us a chance to look at the independent classes. We look at Jay Schreibman's car number 163, of course the Copa Gentleman champion from last year. The standings in Trofeo Pirelli were on screen for you. The top 6, they are Cooper MacNeil and Ross Twest and Joe Rubo and Chris Cagnazzi. In AMS, here are the standings, but just before we bring you those, let's go back to Greg.
Well, a lot unfolding, obviously, and at the very start when you were talking about watching those cars charge up and then back off, that's the best way not only to heat the brakes, but to get heat into the tires. You heat those rotors, and it radiates up through the metal wheels, and then it heats the tires from the inside out. But as you can see, a fair amount of contact here in the opening few laps. The number 61 returning Jean-Claude Sada has just come into the pits. He's climbing out of his beautiful yellow Ferrari. Again, contact related, and a fair number of incidents out there. And watching Cooper, he seemed to be a little loose in spots. He may have set his car up to be a little bit better, a little bit deeper into the race. He is really good at conserving tires, and I think that may have been it. But make no mistake, John McGrew, the Trofeo Pirelli AM driver that qualified second overall, has been on form all weekend long thus far and is very impressive. This is tough to see. Mark Butzo, a problem as well for him. So these opening couple laps really taking their toll at this challenging raceway.
Thanks so much, Greg. And whilst we were listening to your insight, we could see the Todd Coleman car, which had suffered significant damage to the back end of the car, which would suggest that he'd been run into. Todd Coleman making his debut here, done a brilliant job in qualifying. There, the number 9 car of Alfred Caiola, then for Ferrari of Long Island. And that looks like his race is done and dusted. Alfred to the right-hand side of the screen, as we look at it now, is perfectly okay. And we did see Mark Musso climbing out of the number 13 car, also perfectly okay. Some testament to the integral safety of these brilliant Ferrari Challenge cars. So the cars under the auspices of the full course yellow then. So in terms of Trofeo Pirelli AM, as we look at the 115 car of Jason McCarthy, the wide world of Ferrari, he's the best of the Shell drivers. And here is the standings in terms of Shell, McCarthy and Gaio and Booth, and then it's Beck and Schreibman and Horstman. You recall Horstman having gone around. And let me just bring you up to speed with the Trofeo Pirelli AM drivers. John McGrew leading that, then it's Dave Musial, Brent Davis, then it's Senaretti and Heretzi ahead of Barry Zeckelman. That rounds out that circle of standings in terms of the top 6 across both Trofeo Pirelli and Pirelli AM. So here we look at the car number 61, the Jean-Claude Sada car for Boardwalk of Ferrari, and as you can see, that car is out as well. So as Greg indicated, quite a lot going on right in the early stages of this race, and something that I've often said and sometimes been criticised for is it's like the first day back at school, really, isn't it? You've had the winter off and you want to go racing once again, and you get very excited about it. I know what we do up here in the comms booth. You just want to go racing again, and sometimes the excitement overtakes everything going into turn number 1, where you're really, really ambitious, and sometimes, unfortunately, we end up with some skirmishes. Big grid of cars, of course, as well, and that must also be considered as well. And there is, under the lights, you can see just how big this grid of cars is for the Ferrari Challenge North America first round of the season. The clock continuing to count down under this full course yellow. Of course, no one can do any overtaking. Cooper McNeil leading in terms of Trofeo Pirelli. In terms of the AMs, it's John McGrew leading. Jason McCarthy leads in Shell, and in terms of Shell AM, it is the number 199 car of Justin Wetherell for Ferrari of Central Florida. That's the way it looks in terms of the leaders. We've got just under 23 minutes of the race remaining, and it'll be quite frustrating for our drivers who are out there at the moment under this full course yellow. Of course, what will be critical for them is trying to keep some temperature into the brakes and into the tyres as well, so that when we do go racing once again, they'll have the grip that they need. Once again, let's go pit side now with Greg Creamer.
Well, really a shame to see what happened with the 169 of Coleman. This is his first ever race, let alone at night, let alone at Daytona. Before qualifying, he had a nasty case of nerves. I was talking to him, and he was literally almost shaking. But he got in the car, and it was the classic story. He snapped the visor down, it went away, put in a brilliant lap in qualifying, and then to have this happen early, and you pointed out the damage that he had, that's a tough go for him. The guy who was on pole in Copa Shell, you talked about gentleman in the, sorry about that.
Jason McCarthy.
Behind Coleman. Yeah, Jason McCarthy. He ran in 18. He ran the first few races, had some problems. He was fast, but just couldn't finish. Got a little frustrated, said, I need to back off a little bit. He hasn't driven in about a year and a half in terms of anything competitive. Came out here in that qualifying session, dominated in that machine of his, so he is really happy to be back in this championship, and he's looking for the other guys to try and catch up to him. One of the things that we're dealing with here is with a number of cars in different spots around this track. One of the great things about Daytona, they have plenty of emergency vehicles that can get out, get these cars dealt with and removed.
Greg, you bring up a really good point there. Here in Daytona, the teams work exceptionally hard, and the recovery operation has, of course, to be done safely and as speedily as possible, and they are among the best in the world. So as quickly as they can, they're getting the cars recovered, and primary concern, of course, is making sure the drivers are all okay, which of course they are. Then the cars get recovered, and then we can lose the full course yellow and go back to racing once again. So let's take a look at the 199 car of Justin Weatherall then. So the Ferrari of Central Florida driver, who is leading in terms of Shell AMs in this race, as you can see. Greg and I have talked about the canvas that the Ferrari 488 Challenge car offers in terms of ability to put a real stamp of your own livery onto the car. And do you know what? The really rather simple white of the 199 car really appeals to me. It's Weatherall from Lawler, who's P2, then it's Heck, and then Cervini and Quattle Bauman. Dave Musial Jr., I mentioned earlier on, he's making his debut in the Ferrari Challenge. His father, Dave Musial Sr., although he won't thank me for saying that, is currently a second in this race in terms of Trofeo Pirelli AM drivers. He's going to be one to watch out for, in my opinion, is Dave Musial Jr. for Ferrari Lake Forest. The number 23 car that we look at now of John Maygrue. I'm really, really impressed with John. He can show a turn of speed, did so in qualifying, and has certainly taken it to Cooper McNeil at various points in just the few laps we've had of competitive action here in the Ferrari Challenge North America. Race 1, of course, we're under the full course yellow now, and there you can see the track being attended to. Just to make sure that there is some group available to the drivers. Some fluid has gone down, and the track repair team doing everything they can to make that as good as possible. And let's hear a bit more about Dave Musial now from Greg Creamer.
Well, you were talking about the fact that this is the first time he and his son have raced together. His son did the Club Challenge last year, which is like a high-speed event that runs in concert with Ferrari Challenge, but it's not wheel-to-wheel, but you get immense amount of coaching and the like. And he showed great form, decided to go racing this year. This is the first time they've ever raced together on the same track at the same time. And Dave Musial was frankly a little bit emotional about that. And I asked him about that. Is it his senior junior thing? And he said, well, he doesn't have my middle name, so he's technically not a junior, but he's an improvement on me in every way, so we call him Dave 2.0.
Oh, what a great story. Thanks for sharing that, Greg. So they're the 130 car of Dave Musial Jr. then, Ferrari Lake Forest. As Greg was saying, he's taken part in Club Challenge. I mean, the way Ferrari develop drivers is extraordinary. You can go out and you can do Club Challenge, which is against the clock rather than competitive against other drivers necessarily. And Mr. Musial Sr. had said that Junior is going to come into it this year, and it's something that we've been really looking forward to, because there's no question about it. He has got a turn of speed, and it's going to be one well worth watching during the course of this season, which of course takes in Road Atlanta and Indianapolis and Montreal, Laguna Seca, Watkins Glen, and of course over to the Middle East for the Finale Mondiale this year at the beginning of November in Abu Dhabi. So Dave Musial Jr. then, so much talent, in fact, throughout the grid of cars that will be taking part in the Ferrari Challenge North America for 2020. So a lot to live up to. Dave 2.0. Great stuff. Cooper McNeil then is race leader overall, being hounded though unquestionably by John Maygrue, who's an AM driver. We're still under a full course yellow, and clock ticking down means that when we do go back to race action, we're probably going to be sub 15 minutes, I would suggest, just looking at the fact that the 169 car has still got to be recovered of Todd Coleman. You can just see the door there as the recovery teams are operating on that 169 car to get it loaded onto the low loader and get it out of the way. And I think that's the final one to be cleared up, having a look at it from my position here. I think that's the final one. Cooper McNeil then, of course, just one of 4 champions we've got on the grid, existing champions. Cooper McNeil taking the Trofeo Pirelli Championship last year. Neil Gahani incidentally won at that time the AM Championship. Brad Horseman, the Shell AM champion, and Jay Schreibman, who is the Ferrari Copa Gentleman champion. He's currently 5th in terms of the Shell drivers in this particular race, representing Corley Ferrari of Detroit. So someone being taken off to the medical center just for checkups. There's no word of anyone with any injuries really. As always, driver safety is taken of paramount importance, and we're hoping that this full course yellow, now that I can see it flashing atop my timing screen here in Daytona, we're going to be going green pretty soon, I hope. Greg?
Yeah, I do too, and obviously we were just seeing them running through some of that kitty litter, the oil dry that they used to absorb some moisture that was down on the track, and it looks like that might be getting itself worked in as well. Interesting, you were talking, there it is right there, you were talking about Horseman and Schreibman, and remember their battle in Copa-Chelam went all the way to Mugello in the Finale Mondiale last year, where they each had strong races, and in the end Horseman was able to get it. They both got moved up into Copa-Chel, and that battle is rejoined once again, and that's what's going to be interesting. But we talked about the fact that this Jason McCarthy, he's going to be the monkey here and the wrench and things, because he has got such speed that they're going to have to deal with it, and they're certainly capable. Looking at Cooper, you see how close McGrew has been staying close to him, even in this pace lap. When you get quick enough to force Cooper into a couple little bobbles, I think McGrew has seen that, and talking to his coach, he said John is a guy who is relentless. That's how he made it successful in business. And he said if he gets, I have a feeling, if he gets just a little glimmer that he can maybe get Cooper to loosen up, have an issue somewhere, he's going to stay in his mirrors constantly. But of course, this has now packed the whole field up, so he's also got to be paying real close attention to Ross West and Joe Rubo and Dave Musial and the number 8 of Brian Davis, who didn't get the practice times that he wanted, but boy, has he put together a good early race and is stormed up right now into the top 6 overall.
Of course, something else for us to bear in mind, Greg, is of course that not only Cooper, but every one of the drivers that are out there at the moment, they're not running around at racing speed, therefore they're not generating anything like the temperature that they need. So it's almost it will be like a race restart, won't it, where they're going to have to tiptoe really across the first few corners to get everything back up to temperature once again to go racing. And John McGrew, I just have a feeling here, he might be like a viper ready to pounce, just thinking if, as you've alluded to, Greg, if he can push Cooper into making a very rare but even a tiny mistake, that will be enough for John to try and go through. Let's see what develops. The lights are still on the safety car, so my anticipation that full course yellow was going to be coming to a close imminently perhaps is wrong. And what are we down to? 13.5 minutes of the race duration remaining, which means that it's going to be something of a dash for cash then under the lights here in Daytona. It is Ferrari Challenge North America, and finally we see the 169 car of Todd Coleman taken away, having done such a brilliant job in qualifying. Might come back stronger, and there you can see the cars going through that turn 8, 9, 10, 11 sequence, which is the bus stop here, which to the very right-hand side of your picture, of course we can see it from here, is Lake Lloyd, and it's led to believe that much of the banking here was made out of the aggregate that was taken out of to create Lake Lloyd. So great use of the aggregate that came out to make the banking here in Daytona. And there is a sight that you don't always want to see, but that's not where we want to see one of these fantastic 488 Challenge cars, and that's on the back of the low loader. But it was almost inevitable that there would be one or two little incidents right at the start of the race, and that was the case. So as I say, Todd will come back stronger from that, and just as Greg had suggested, John McGrew is really harrying Cooper McNeil here. So it's a battle between Trofeo Pirelli and Pirelli AM drivers. Cooper McNeil runs in the Trofeo Pirelli class, and John McGrew, Trofeo Pirelli AM. So we will see when the lights go out on the safety car and the full course yellow will be removed, and we will go back to racing. And just to repeat what I said, it's going to be something of a dash for cash, because even on the completion of this lap, we're going to be probably down to just 10 minutes remaining in this. Now, is it just my imagination, or is the safety car speeding up just a little bit to get the drivers back up to a little bit of speed before resuming the race? I'm trying to anticipate what race control are thinking. In Trofeo Pirelli, then it's McNeil from Ross Chwest, from Joe Rubo, Chris Cagnazzi, and then it's Workman and Neil Gahani, P6 in terms of Trofeo Pirelli. In terms of the AM class, it is John Maygrue ahead of Dave Musial, and then it's Davis and Zeckelman and Sanaretti and Hereggi, the top 6 in Trofeo Pirelli AM. With regards to Copa Shell, Jason McCarthy and there's Gaio and Booth and Beck and Schreibman and Horstman, and that battle resuming as Greg had suggested. And then in terms of Shell AM, Weatherall from Lawler, then it's Heck, Savini, Quattelbaum and Dave Musial Jr. Then as we look at the number 23 car of John Maygrue, he's the one that's doing the chasing, and the lights are out. If my eyesight is as good as I think it is, the lights are out on the safety car, which means that the full course yellow should be coming to an end at the conclusion of this lap. And John Maygrue almost goes side by side with Cooper McNeil. And, well, one of my predictions is going to be absolutely right. It's going to be less than 10 minutes of racing to come. Going to be fraught, fast, and truly exciting in Ferrari Challenge North America then, as the cars all bunch up, and we will go back to racing once again. Can John Maygrue just push Cooper into making the tiniest of errors and try and find an advantage and go through? Well, there you can see the safety car going through the bus stop, then through turns 8, 9, 10 and 11, and out onto the Speedway 3 turn, and turn 12, and then the cars will speed up as the safety car peels off into the pit lane, and we will go back to racing once again. Fantastic sight as the cars all make their way through the bus stop, looking at the 115 car of Jason McCarthy, then wide world of Ferrari, who's leading the Shell drivers currently. Bunches of threes at the moment, as you can see, as all the cars now come together. And, well, it's really interesting because you need to be good at restarting, and in my opinion, Cooper did a great job there. He backed John Maygrue up, and then he gave it a footful of throttle, and that's given him a couple of car lengths over John Maygrue as we go back to racing with a green. And Ferrari Challenge North America Race 1 for 2020 gets back underway. Cooper McNeil leading and John Maygrue chasing, and John trying to close in and just squeeze that gap to Cooper McNeil and get as close to him as he possibly can. Running in P3, Ross Chwest. He's P2 in class, but P3 in the race overall. Then it is Joe Rubo and Dave Musial, and Rubo's under a bit of pressure from Dave Musial now, in my opinion. Musial looking quite close to the Joseph Rubo car. And Cooper McNeil got it all perfectly under control, and I have to say he engineered the restart absolutely perfectly as the cars got going once again. And John Maygrue pretty soon is going to have Ross Chwest to think about as well. So not only can he try and focus on attacking Cooper McNeil, he's going to have to turn some of his attention to defending at the back as well. So side by side, coming into the next turn, we pick up on the Hereggi car there, the Trofeo Pirelli AM driver. The car's making the way up onto the banked part of the oval now. Great debut place to make the 2020 race 1 here in Daytona, and especially with the romance of the lights as well. The cars look and sound absolutely phenomenal. Now, for my money, John Maygrue has got just a little bit closer to Cooper McNeil, but elsewhere, plenty of overtaking going on, with merely 7.25 minutes left in the race. So brake discs lighting up. There is the Jay Schreibman car that you can see just exiting the bus stop there. And under pressure there, Jason McCarthy, but keeping his cool, just avoiding the stricken number 8 car of Brian Davis. So here in one of the sections where the lights are so bright you can actually see the cars. The order is McNeil from Maygrue, and then it is Ross Chwest and Joe Rubo, Dave Musial, Chris Cagnazzi. before we find McCarthy then, who is P7 overall, but P1 in terms of Shell drivers. So the battle for P2 is between Ross Twest and Joseph Rubo, then the 25 and 28 car, P2 and P3, because of course the car ahead of them, John McGrew, is from the Trofeo Pirelli AM class. I think Cooper McNeil has just built himself up enough of comfort margin. There's Dave Musial then doing some chasing as well in the number 30 car. He of course is P2 in Trofeo Pirelli AM. So the car's around that turn and under some pressure there from the 188 car of Michael Krekel, the Ferrari of Beverly Hills driver, as we see them dive once again into the bus stop. And the car that is under a bit of pressure there is the 162 car of Quattelbaum. Michael Quattelbaum then driving for Ferrari of Houston. And positions 5 and 6 then alternated following that overtake, and Cooper McNeil has built up something of a couple of seconds gap now over John McGrew, and then it is Ross Twest. And in terms of Shell AM, Weatherall doing a very good job indeed, heading Lawler and Heck, who are the top three. It's Weatherall, Lawler and Heck in terms of AMS, and just taking a look at the inside, but that very quickly becomes the outside. Joe Rubo and Ross Twest then continuing their battle for second position. And of course what this does, it just plays into the hands of Cooper and also John McGrew, who are ahead of them, because the more Ross Twest and Joseph Rubo are fighting, it just slows them down and perhaps allows the opportunity for Dave Musial to get ever closer. This is Justin Weatherall as we go back trackside to Greg once again.
Well, I'll tell you what, Dave, just seeing an incident out there, a couple of cars involved, and I'm trying to figure out if that is Schreibman.
Yes, it is.
And that's unbelievable. We saw him last year. He would be so fast in qualifying in the first of the doubleheaders, and then have a problem in that race. Rebound with a great qualifying run, and then come back with a great drive. He said, I've got to put together weekends. He had such a good one going here. This is a real shame to watch here, as we're obviously seeing some great battling. Just wanted to make a comment about Weatherall, who's leading in the Copachel AM category. He ran one race last year at Homestead, but put together a couple of fourths. You could see that he had some speed. He has come back early this year. He didn't run that great in his practice rounds, but in qualifying, he picked the pace up noticeably, and he has driven a very heady race so far for him to move up and be leading in the Copachel AM category.
Cheers, Greg. You're absolutely right in what you say about Jay Schreibman. He's had equal bad luck to good luck, that's for sure, and he does have such turns of speed. Let's take a look at what happened with Jay Schreibman then as we pick this up here. The contact there with the 188 car of Michael Krekel, and Jay Schreibman then ends up on the grass, and truthfully that's where he stayed. Hasn't moved up. He does manage to get the car pointing in the right direction again. He'll be absolutely furious. And I must, to give him credit, the Copa Gentleman champion from last year, and Jay Schreibman, one of the, like everyone in the paddock, super guy and really, really talented. And just we'll be hoping that at some point his luck will change. Less than 3 minutes of the race remaining. Cooper McNeil continues to lead ahead of John McGrew, Joseph Rubo, and then Ross Twest, then Dave Musial and Chris Cagnazzi. And whichever way you look at the moment, there are fights going on, and this is Osvaldo Gallo then, but here is the overall leader, Cooper McNeil then in the familiar livery and the number 63 Ferrari of Westlake car. Cooper McNeil, the 2019 Trofeo Pirelli champion. So this fight continuing, and we mentioned it just a few moments ago. The driver under pressure here is Jim Booth in car number 144 as Gallo almost takes a look at the inside of the Jim Booth car. This is a battle for P2 in terms of Shell drivers. And what a great battle it is. And it will continue for the remaining just under 2 minutes that we have in this race. So the 176 car, driven of course by Lance Corley for Ferrari of Atlanta, one of our gentleman drivers. And there we pick up on the car of Jan Bernier for Ferrari of Seattle. Meantime, in car number 115, McCarthy leads in terms of Shell drivers for the wide world of Ferrari, and he's got Barry Zeckelman and Horeggi behind him, and therefore providing a nice cushion ahead of Osvaldo Gallo and Booth, who are P2 and P3. Gallo managing to get past Booth, who is another one of our gentleman drivers as well. Look at the brake discs light up on the Cooper MacNeil car. Not sure he didn't make just a slight error going into that turn, but he's got enough of a margin that John McGrew is now under a bit of pressure from Joe Rubo. Joe Rubo has caught up with John McGrew, but Cooper MacNeil, he's got the remaining corners to do, and the completion of this lap will see him crown the start of the 2020 season in the Ferrari Challenge North America, potentially with a win. So John McGrew then, P2 in the race overall, but of course he is winning the Trofeo Pirelli AM class currently, and he's got a couple of cars ahead of behind him before Dave Musial, but Cooper MacNeil then on the bank turn looking good in the number 63 car. I think he really got that restart sorted perfectly, and any chase from John McGrew was going to be futile at that point. So poised, and just has a couple of turns to do now, has Cooper MacNeil, as he rides the banking once again here at Daytona International Speedway. Such a successful driver, and he will kick off his Ferrari Challenge season for 2020 in absolutely the perfect way in the number 63 car as he heads towards the checkered flag. He takes the race win for Pro Trofeo Pirelli. In terms of AMS, John McGrew takes a great P2, but in class he takes a win. Then it's Joe Rubo, Ross Chwest, Dave Musial, Chris Cagnazzi, and McCarthy takes the win in the number 115 car for Shell, and for the 199 car, Mr. Weatherall then heading towards the checkered flag. And what a start to the season it will be for him. There's just a few meters of tarmac to do on this hallowed Daytona International Speedway as he heads towards the checkered flag and takes it. Brilliant drives. So Cooper MacNeil then, P1, race winner overall, ahead of John McGrew. To give you the top three in each category then, Cooper MacNeil for Trofeo Pirelli ahead of Joe Rubo and Ross Chwest. And in terms of AMS, John McGrew, Dave Musial and Barry Zeckelman. For Cooper Shell, McCarthy then taking the win ahead of Gallo and Booth. And then for Shell AMS, it's Weatherall, Aiken and Lawler. So a race punctuated then, of course, by that safety car, full course yellow. Following one or two cars out, almost right at the start of the race. So McCarthy then in 115. Jason McCarthy for Wide World of Ferrari. What a superb debut he has made. Winning his race ahead of Osvaldo Gallo and Booth then, who takes P3 in terms of Shell drivers. So the cars all led around now by the safety car, and Justin Weatherall, Ferrari of Central Florida, taking the win in terms of Shell AM drivers. Right, let's give you the top three once again. By category, Cooper MacNeil, Joseph Rubo, Ross Chwest for Trofeo Pirelli. For Trofeo Pirelli AM, John McGrew, Dave Musial and Barry Zeckelman. Shell drivers, McCarthy, Gallo and Booth, and then Weatherall, Aiken and Lawler in terms of Cooper Shell AM drivers. The top three in each then, we have both Trofeo Pirelli and Cooper Shell, and the top three in every class. So we have another race to come tomorrow, of course. On behalf of myself, Greg Kramer, thanks so much for being part of the start of Ferrari Challenge North America under the lights in Daytona.